I stood in the White House East Room, wearing my dress uniform with medals gleaming against the dark fabric. The room fell silent. Then, the President of the United States rose from his seat. Every person in the room followed. My parents stood in the back corner, frozen, faces drained of color. Our eyes met. I remembered their words from 6 years ago. She's playing soldier. Give her a doll. They had rolled their eyes at my combat boots, skipped every ceremony. Now they watched me receive the nation's highest honor. 6 years earlier, I sat at my parents' dining table in our suburban Connecticut home. The chandelier above cast warm light over the polished mahogany surface, illuminating the faces of my family gathered for Sunday dinner. I was 22 years old, fresh out of college with a degree in international relations and a secret that felt like fire in my chest. My older brother Thomas sat across from me, his expensive suit jacket draped over the chair behind him. He'd just made partner at a prestigious law firm in Manhattan. My younger sister Grace picked at her salad, talking about her acceptance into Johns Hopkins Medical School. Around us, extended family filled the other seats. Aunt Patricia, who ran a successful real estate company, Uncle Donald, a finance executive, Grandmother Eleanor, the family matriarch, sitting quietly at the end of the table. The conversation flowed around me like water around a stone. Career achievements, investment portfolios, country club memberships. My father Richard held court at the head of the table, discussing a recent merger at his law firm. My mother Diane kept refilling wine glasses and smiling that perfect hostess smile she'd perfected over 30 years of dinner parties. I took a deep breath. My hands trembled slightly as I set down my fork. The sound of metal against china seemed louder than it should have been. I have an announcement, I said. The conversation didn't stop immediately. Thomas kept talking about billable hours. Grace laughed at something Aunt Patricia said. But gradually, the voices quieted. Eyes turned toward me. I've enlisted in the army, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. I leave for basic training in 3 weeks. For a moment, complete silence. Then my father laughed. Actually laughed out loud. A sharp bark of sound that made me flinch. Good one. Angelina, he said, reaching for his wine glass. You almost had me. I'm serious, I said. I've been accepted into officer candidate school. I've already taken the oath. The papers are signed. My mother's face went pale, then flushed deep red. Her hand gripped the stem of her wine glass so tightly, I thought it might shatter. This is a joke, she said, her voice tight. Tell me this is a joke. It's not a joke, Mom. This is what I want to do. I want to serve my country. I want to make a real difference. I want to lead. To be part of something bigger than myself. Thomas smirked, leaning back in his chair. Is this because you couldn't get a real job? Because Dad could still get you into the firm. It's not too late. I don't want to work at a law firm, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. I want to serve. I've wanted this since I was 18. I've been planning this for 4 years. Aunt Patricia set down her fork with a delicate clink. Honey, the military is for people who have no other options. You have a degree from a good school. You have opportunities. Why would you throw that away? Uncle Donald nodded, swirling his wine. Or boys. Let's be honest. It's for boys. The military is no place for a young woman. I looked at Grandmother Eleanor, hoping for support. She met my eyes but said nothing, just slowly shook her head. I've thought about this carefully, I said, my voice rising slightly. This isn't a backup plan. This is my first choice. My only choice. I want to serve in military intelligence. I want to protect people. I want to lead soldiers. This is what I meant to do. My father set his glass down hard enough that wine sloshed over the rim. We paid $80,000 for your education so you could play soldier? So you could run around in the woods with a gun? It's not playing, I said, my jaw clenched. It's serving. This is humiliating, my mother said, her voice breaking. What will we tell our friends? What will we tell the Hendersons? The Williamses? Your father's partners? Tell them I'm serving my country, I said. Tell them I'm doing something meaningful. Thomas laughed, that condescending older brother laugh I'd heard my whole life. Face it, Angie. You're not tough enough for military life. Remember when you quit soccer after one season because it was too hard? Remember when you cried during that scary movie? You've never finished anything difficult in your life. That's not fair, I started, but he kept going. You're too emotional, too soft, too privileged. You've never even been camping. How are you going to survive basic training? The family joined in then, a chorus of voices listing all the reasons I would fail. I wasn't strong enough. I wasn't disciplined enough. I couldn't handle stress. I was too feminine, too sensitive, too sheltered. My father's voice cut through the others. You're embarrassing this family, Angelina. This is a phase, and it's a ridiculous one. I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. My voice shook, but I forced the words out. I'm doing this whether you support me or not. The papers are signed. I've taken the oath. I leave in 3 weeks. I thought you'd be proud of me. I thought you'd understand that I want to serve something bigger than myself. Something more important than money or status. My voice cracked on the last word, but I refused to cry. I wouldn't give them that satisfaction. I thought my family would support me, I finished quietly. My mother stood abruptly and walked to the hall closet. She returned carrying a wrapped box, which she placed on the table in front of me with a thud. We were going to give you this for your birthday next month, she said, her voice cold. I unwrapped it slowly. Inside was an expensive designer handbag, probably worth $2,000, and underneath it, a job application. Already filled out. For a position at my father's law firm. We already have your whole future planned, Angelina, my mother said. A good job, a respectable career, eventually a partnership, a husband from a good family, children, a house in the right neighborhood. Don't throw it away on this soldier fantasy. The entire family nodded in agreement. Every single person at that table looked at me with a mixture of pity and disappointment. In that moment, I realized something that hurt more than any insult they'd thrown at me. They had never seen me as capable of making my own decisions. They had never seen me as an adult, as a person with my own dreams and goals. I was just a doll to be dressed up and positioned in the life they'd designed. I left the house that night. I'd already packed a duffel bag and hidden it in my car, suspecting the dinner might go badly. I drove to a motel 6 miles away, paid for a week in cash, and sat on the scratchy bedspread in the dim light. I called my recruiter, Sergeant First Class Marcus Wright, even though it was almost 10 at night. Sergeant Wright, I said when he answered. This is Angelina. I just wanted to confirm. I'm ready. I'm absolutely ready. 3 months later, I stood in formation at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, as the summer sun beat down on the drill field. My uniform was soaked with sweat. My muscles ached in places I didn't know could ache, and I had never felt more alive. Basic training was everything they said it would be, and nothing I'd expected. The physical challenges were brutal. 5-mile runs before dawn. Obstacle courses that left me covered in mud and bruises. Weapons training that made my shoulders burn. Land navigation exercises where I learned to read terrain like a language. But I was good at it. Better than good. I'd placed in the top 5 of my platoon for marksmanship. I'd completed the obstacle course faster than half the men in my unit. My drill sergeant, Sergeant Monica Hayes, a compact woman with steel in her eyes and 20 years of service under her belt, had pulled me aside after a particularly grueling tactical exercise. You've got something, Private, she'd said. Leadership potential. Keep pushing. Those words meant more to me than any praise I'd ever received. I'd made one real friend. Emma, a girl from rural Tennessee, with a soft drawl and hands that could field strip a rifle in under a minute. She bunked next to me in the barracks. At night, when we were supposed to be sleeping, we'd whisper about our lives before the army. She'd grown up on a farm, joined to escape poverty, and create opportunities her small town couldn't offer. I'd told her about my family. They'll come around, she'd said. Once they see what you accomplish. I wanted to believe her. Every Sunday, during our brief personal time, I wrote letters home. Long letters describing my training, my achievements, my growing confidence. I told them about scoring expert on the rifle range, about being selected as a squad leader, about the night land navigation course where I'd successfully led my team through 12 miles of dark forest using only a map, compass, and red lens flashlight. I wanted to share my pride with them. I wanted them to understand. Every letter went unanswered. During mail call, I'd watch other recruits tear open envelopes from home, their faces lighting up as they read news from family and friends. Emma always got packages from her mom. Homemade cookies, even though they always arrived crushed into crumbs. She'd share them with everyone. I got nothing. Mail for Johnson? Mail for Patterson? Mail for Rodriguez? The drill sergeant would call out, and I'd stand there empty-handed, trying not to let the disappointment show on my face. Emma noticed. Of course she noticed. One night, after a particularly brutal 20-mile ruck march, she sat next to me on my bunk. They'll come around, she said again, but this time her voice was less certain. Maybe, I said, but I didn't believe it anymore. 2 weeks before graduation, I filled out the guest form for the ceremony. 3 tickets for my parents, 1 for whichever sibling wanted to come. I imagined them sitting in the stands, watching me graduate with honors, watching me give a speech as platoon leader, finally seeing what I'd accomplished. I called home from the payphone outside the barracks. We had 15 minutes of phone privileges. My hands shook as I dialed. My mother answered on the 4th ring. Hello? Mom, it's Angelina. Silence. Then, what do you want? The coldness in her voice hit me like a physical blow, but I pushed forward. I'm graduating from basic training in 2 weeks. I'm graduating with honors, Mom. I'm giving a speech. I've been selected as platoon leader out of 200 recruits. I wanted to invite you, all of you. I have tickets. I really want you to be there. Another long silence. Mom? Are you still there? Angelina, we're not coming to watch you parade around in a costume. My heart dropped into my stomach. It's not a costume. It's a uniform. I've worked so hard. This means everything to me. Please. Then, you should have chosen a path that means something to us. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. Mom, please. I'm your daughter. I've accomplished something incredible. I just want you to see it. To be proud of me. When you're ready to apologize and come home, we'll talk. Until then, you're on your own with this soldier thing. I heard my father's voice in the background. Then the phone was pulled away. Angelina, my father said, his voice stern. This conversation is over. You made your choice. Now live with it. Dad, wait. Please just listen. I heard Thomas laughing in the background. She's playing dress-up and wants us to watch. That's rich. The line went dead. I stood there holding the receiver for 20 minutes. Other recruits came and went, making their own calls. But I just stood frozen, listening to the dial tone. Emma found me eventually. She didn't say anything, just stood next to me until I finally hung up the phone. They're not coming, I said. I'm sorry, she whispered. Graduation day arrived with bright sunshine and clear blue skies. The parade ground was immaculate. Flags snapped in the breeze. Families filled the stands, cameras ready. I stood in formation in my dress uniform, medals gleaming, feeling both proud and hollow. As platoon leader, I stood at the front. I'd earned the Distinguished Honor Graduate Award, the highest recognition given to one recruit per cycle. I'd worked for this, bled for this, pushed my body beyond limits I didn't know I had. Before marching onto the field, I scanned the crowd one final time. My designated seats were empty. I tried to swallow the disappointment. I'd expected this. I'd known they wouldn't come. Then I saw them, in the very back row of the stands, almost hidden behind a support column. My father in his business suit, my mother in a dress. Thomas checking his phone. Grace looking uncomfortable. They came. Relief flooded through me so intensely I felt dizzy. They came after all. Despite everything, despite their words, they came to see me graduate. The ceremony began. I marched with my platoon, every movement precise, every step in perfect formation. Months of training evident in every motion. When they called my name for the award, I walked across that stage with my head high. I gave my speech about service and sacrifice, about finding strength in adversity, about the meaning of true commitment. My voice was strong and clear. I meant every word. After the ceremony, after the final salute, after my drill sergeant shook my hand and said, "You did good, lieutenant material for sure," I rushed through the crowd. Still in my full dress uniform, medals catching the sunlight, I pushed past families reuniting, past tearful mothers hugging their sons, past fathers clapping their daughters on the back. I got within 10 feet of my family. My father looked directly at me. Our eyes met. He rolled his eyes dramatically and turned to my mother. "Can we go now? This is boring." My mother pulled out her phone and turned her back to me, suddenly very interested in something on her screen. Thomas didn't even look up from his own phone. "How much longer?" "I have a conference call in an hour." Grace met my eyes for just a second, then looked away, her face red. "Wait," I called out. My voice cracked. "You came all this way." My father turned back, his expression annoyed. "Your grandmother made us. She's in the car. We're leaving." "But I just graduated. I won. I got the highest honor." "Don't you want to say anything? Don't you want to even talk to me?" My mother's voice was ice. "We did our duty. We came. That's all you can ask for." They turned as a group and walked toward the parking lot. I followed, my dress shoes clicking on the pavement, my medals jangling with each step. "Please," I called. "Just 5 minutes. Let me tell you about what I've accomplished. Let me introduce you to my drill sergeant. Let me show you that I was right about this." They kept walking. I stopped in the middle of the parking lot, watching their car pull away. The exhaust fumes mixed with the humid South Carolina air. I stood there in my honor guard uniform, Distinguished Honor Graduate Medal pinned to my chest, completely alone. Sergeant Hayes found me 15 minutes later, still standing in that same spot. "Family trouble?" she asked gently. I couldn't speak. I just nodded. "Let me tell you something private," she said. And I noticed she didn't call me by my last name, which was unusual. Some people will never see your worth. That's their loss, not yours. You graduated top of your cycle. You're officer material. You have a future in this army. Don't let anyone take that from you. I finally found my voice. I don't think I have a family anymore. Sergeant Hayes put a hand on my shoulder, a rare gesture from someone so disciplined. "Yeah, you do. It's just not the family you were born into. Come on. Emma's looking for you. She wants to celebrate." I followed her back to the barracks, but I kept looking back at the empty parking lot, at the space where my family's car had been. They'd driven 6 hours just to walk away. That hurt more than if they'd never come at all. 1 year later, I was Second Lieutenant Angelina, 24 years old, standing in a briefing room at an undisclosed military installation. The transformation from that hurt recruit in a parking lot to this officer had been forged through months of intensive training. I'd graduated top of my officer candidate school class. My commission ceremony had been attended by Emma, Sergeant Hayes, and a handful of other soldiers who'd become my chosen family. No one from Connecticut came. I'd stopped expecting them to. I'd specialized in intelligence and tactical operations. My superiors recognized something in me, some combination of analytical thinking and decisive action that made me valuable. I'd been assigned to an elite intelligence unit, working with special operations forces. The work was challenging, complex, and exactly what I'd hoped for. I'd buried myself in it. Long hours analyzing intelligence reports, learning languages, studying enemy tactics. If I worked hard enough, stayed busy enough, I didn't have time to think about the hole where my family should have been. 14 months had passed since I'd spoken to any of them. 14 months of silence. Now, I stood with my small team, looking at deployment orders projected on a screen. Lieutenant, your team deploys in 72 hours, my commanding officer said. Location classified until you're airborne. Duration estimated at 9 months. You'll be providing intelligence support for ongoing operations. High-risk environment. Any questions? I had none. This was what I'd trained for. That night, alone in my quarters, I wrote one final letter home. I kept it brief, factual. I was deploying to a combat zone. I didn't know when I'd be able to contact them again. If something happened to me, my personal effects would be sent to the address on file. I ended with 5 words. I loved you anyway, Mom. I mailed it the next morning and flew out 2 days later. The combat zone was exactly as brutal as I'd been warned. Heat that felt like a physical weight. Dust that got into everything. The constant awareness that danger could come from any direction. We operated out of a small forward operating base, my 5-person intelligence team working 18-hour days. I was good at my job. Really good. I could read patterns in communications, intercepts, predict enemy movements, connect pieces of information that others missed. The special operations teams I supported started requesting me by name. 6 months into deployment, working the night shift in our operations center, I intercepted a communication. Just a fragment, barely 30 seconds of chatter on a frequency we'd been monitoring. But it was enough. I pulled up maps, cross-referenced previous intelligence, ran the voice pattern through our recognition software. My hands moved fast across the keyboard, adrenaline sharpening my focus. Sergeant Miller, I called to my senior NCO. I need you to see this. He came over, read my screen, his face going serious. When? Best estimate, 18 hours. Maybe less. You sure about this source? 70% confidence. But if I'm right, we have a convoy running straight into an ambush tomorrow afternoon. The convoy in question was carrying humanitarian aid workers. 3 Americans, 4 locals, and 16 children. Going to a school project in a contested village. 23 people total. I reported up the chain of command immediately. Filed the intelligence report. Requested immediate action. Then I waited. And waited. Hours passed. The authorization to change the convoy route required multiple signatures, confirmations, risk assessments. Bureaucracy moved slowly, even with lives at stake. Lieutenant, we need more confirmation, came the response from higher headquarters. The source is new, untested. Changing the route requires approval from 3 different commands. Sir, we don't have time for the full process. The attack window is closing. Understood, but protocol exists for a reason. Continue monitoring. We'll expedite the authorization. I monitored. I sent updates. I highlighted the urgency. The clock kept ticking. 16 hours before the estimated attack, I still had no authorization. The convoy was scheduled to depart in 6 hours. They're not going to approve it in time, Sergeant Miller said quietly. He was right. I could see it in the delayed responses. The requests for additional verification we didn't have time to gather. 23 people were going to die because paperwork moved too slowly. I looked at my team. 4 soldiers who'd followed me through 6 months of combat operations, who trusted my judgment, who knew my track record. Get your gear, I said. Lieutenant? Miller looked at me carefully. We're going to intercept that convoy ourselves. We'll warn them off the route. It's a 4-hour drive. We leave in 30 minutes. That's not authorized. We have no orders. I know. This could end your career. I know that too. But those are American civilians. And children. If we do nothing, they die. I can't live with that. Can you? One by one, my team nodded. We loaded into 2 vehicles and drove into the night. 4 hours later, covered in dust and running on pure adrenaline, we spotted the convoy assembling at a staging point. 3 armored SUVs, 2 supply trucks, I could see the aid workers loading supplies, laughing, unaware of what was waiting for them. I pulled our vehicle in front of theirs, jumped out in full combat gear. The convoy leader, Major Scott Henderson, climbed out of his vehicle, looking annoyed. "Who are you and why are you blocking my convoy?" "Lieutenant Angelina, Intelligence Section." "Sir, you cannot take the planned route. We have reliable intelligence of an ambush." "Where are your orders, Lieutenant?" "Sir, there wasn't time. The authorization is stuck in channels, but the threat is real. You have to believe me." He pulled out his radio. "Let me confirm this with headquarters. There's no time for confirmation. The attack window opens in 30 minutes. We argued. He questioned my authority, my intelligence, my judgment. His radio crackled with headquarters, asking for verification of my identity, my orders, my authorization. While we argued, my communications specialist, Corporal Jackson, suddenly held up his hand. "Lieutenant, I'm picking up hostile chatter. They're moving into position. They're early." Before I could respond, gunfire erupted from the ridgeline 300 yards away. The ambush had started. "Get down!" I screamed. My team reacted instantly, returning fire, taking defensive positions. The convoy drivers ducked behind their vehicles. The aid workers were screaming. We were outnumbered, but we'd trained for this. Miller and Jackson laid down suppressive fire. I got on the radio calling for air support, knowing it was 20 minutes out at minimum. Through my weapon's scope, I saw the real threat. A vehicle racing toward us from the east. Moving fast. Suicide bomber. My mind registered instantly. Vehicle-borne IED, heading straight for the convoy. I shouted. If it reached the convoy, everyone would die. The blast radius would take out all 5 convoy vehicles, and probably my team too. I made a decision in less than 2 seconds. I sprinted to one of our vehicles, jumped in, and gunned the engine. I had to intercept that bomber before it reached the convoy. "Lieutenant, what are you doing?" Miller screamed. I didn't answer. I just drove straight at the approaching vehicle. 300 yards, 200, 100. I could see the driver's face now, see his determination. 50 yards. Our vehicles were going to collide head-on. 25 yards. A gunshot cracked over the noise of engines. The bomber's windshield spiderwebbed. The vehicle swerved slightly. Jackson had made the shot from 300 yards with iron sights. The bomber's vehicle veered left and detonated 50 yards from the convoy instead of 5. The explosion was massive. The shockwave hit my vehicle like a giant fist. I felt myself lifted, thrown. The vehicle rolled. Metal screamed. Glass shattered. Then everything went black. I woke up in a hospital room. White walls. The smell of antiseptic. Beeping monitors. My whole body felt like it had been hit by a truck. Actually, I realized slowly, I'd been hit by a bomb. Close enough. Anyway, a nurse noticed I was awake and hurried over. "Lieutenant, don't try to move. You're in Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany. You've been here 3 days. 3 days. I tried to process that. My mouth was dry. My head pounded. "My team?" I managed to croak. "They're fine. Minor injuries. You took the worst of it." She listed my injuries like she was reading a grocery list. 3 broken ribs, severe concussion, shrapnel wounds across my left side, 2nd-degree burns on my left arm where my sleeve had caught fire. I'd been lucky. The vehicle's armor had saved my life. "The convoy?" I asked. "All 23 people survived. Not a single casualty. You saved them." Relief flooded through me, stronger than any pain medication. Over the next few days, my team members visited. Miller came first, his arm in a sling. "You're insane, Lieutenant," he said, but he was smiling. "Absolutely insane, and you saved all our lives." Jackson brought me a card signed by all the convoy members. Inside, handwritten notes. "Thank you for your courage. You're a hero. My daughter is alive because of you." But there was a problem. A big one. Colonel Patricia Morrison, arrived on my 4th day in the hospital. She was from the Inspector General's office. Cold eyes, tight bun, uniform so crisp it could cut paper. Lieutenant Angelina, I'm here to inform you that a formal investigation has been opened regarding your actions. My heart sank. She listed the charges. Unauthorized movement of military assets, engaging hostile forces without orders, countermanding a superior officer, unauthorized use of military force. You acted completely outside your authority, Lieutenant. You put your team at risk. You engaged in combat operations without authorization. You're lucky you didn't start an international incident. I tried to sit up straighter, ignoring the pain in my ribs. Ma'am, 23 people are alive because of what my team did. 23 people might be alive. Or you might have compromised an ongoing intelligence operation. Or endangered other operations in the area. Or acted on faulty intelligence. The Army doesn't run on might-have-beens, Lieutenant. It runs on orders, chain of command, and proper authorization. You violated all three, so what happens now? You'll face a formal hearing. Depending on the findings, you could be looking at a court-martial. At minimum, your career is over. At maximum, you could face prison time. She left without another word. I lay in that hospital bed, staring at the ceiling. I'd done the right thing. I knew I'd done the right thing. But the right thing was going to destroy everything I'd worked for. I'd lost my family for this career. And now, I was going to lose the career too. 2 days later, Emma arrived. She'd gotten emergency leave and flown all the way from her posting in South Korea. You look like hell, she said, hugging me carefully. Feel like it too. She pulled up a chair. So, hero, what's the damage? Besides the broken ribs? Full investigation. Possible court-martial. Career over. That's garbage. You saved 23 lives. I broke about 40 regulations doing it. Emma was quiet for a moment. Have you heard from your family? No. Why would I? Because your story leaked. It's all over the news back home. One of the aid workers was a journalist. She wrote about what happened. It's everywhere. She pulled out her phone and showed me article after article. Soldier saves 23 lives in daring combat action. Female lieutenant risks life to stop ambush. The stories were everywhere. That journalist reached out to your family for comment, Emma said carefully. My stomach dropped. And she showed me another article. This one had quotes from my father. We have no comment. Angelina made her choice to pursue military service against our wishes and advice. We hope she's learned that glory-seeking has consequences. This family does not condone reckless behavior, even in uniform. I read it again. And again. There was a quote from my mother, too. The military encouraged our daughter's impulsive tendencies. We tried to guide her toward a respectable career. She chose differently. End quote. End quote. The article noted that my parents seemed embarrassed by their daughter's actions. I handed the phone back to Emma. I couldn't look at it anymore. I shouldn't have shown you, she said quietly. No, I needed to see it. Because now I understood. It didn't matter what I accomplished. It didn't matter if I saved lives or earned medals or did everything right. To my parents, I would always be an embarrassment, a disappointment, a failure. They'd publicly criticized me in the national media while I was lying in a hospital bed with shrapnel wounds, while I faced court-martial, while my career hung by a thread. That night, after Emma left, I wrote a formal letter to the Army's personnel office. I requested that my parents be removed from my emergency contact list. I legally designated Emma as my next of kin. I accepted, finally, that I was completely alone. The next morning, Colonel Morrison returned. She stood at the foot of my bed, her expression unreadable. The investigation is proceeding, Lieutenant. A formal disciplinary hearing has been scheduled for 8 weeks from now. You'll be transported back to the United States as soon as you're medically cleared. You're to report to Fort Bragg and remain on base pending the hearing. Yes, ma'am. The charges are serious. Your attorney will contact you. I suggest you prepare your defense carefully. Ma'am, can I ask something? She raised an eyebrow. Do you think I made the wrong call? For just a moment, something flickered in her cold eyes. What I think doesn't matter, Lieutenant. The regulations are clear. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, those 23 people are alive. That matters to someone, just not to the people who were supposed to love me most. 2 months later, I stood in a military courtroom at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. My uniform was perfectly pressed, my insignia gleaming, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. The tribunal consisted of 3 senior officers seated behind an elevated desk. They looked down at me with expressions that revealed nothing. My military attorney, Captain Brian Peters, sat next to me. He'd been assigned to my case 3 weeks ago. He seemed competent but overwhelmed. This wasn't looking good. The charges were read aloud. Unauthorized engagement with hostile forces, insubordination, reckless endangerment, exceeding authority. Each one felt like a nail being hammered into my career's coffin. Colonel Morrison presented the case against me. She was thorough, methodical, devastating. She showed how I'd acted without orders, how I'd taken military vehicles without authorization, how I'd countermanded a superior officer, how my actions could have had catastrophic consequences. The military cannot function if every lieutenant decides they know better than their commanders, she said. Lieutenant Angelina made decisions far above her pay grade, outside her authority, and in violation of multiple regulations. Her actions, regardless of outcome, represent a dangerous precedent. If we allow this, we invite chaos. She laid out scenarios where my actions could have gone wrong. The intelligence could have been faulty. I could have led my team into a trap. I could have compromised other operations. The convoy could have been delayed anyway. The suicide bomber might have detonated anyway, killing my team. 23 people survived, she concluded. But at what cost? At the cost of military discipline. At the cost of the chain of command. At the cost of every regulation that keeps our forces safe and effective. When she sat down, I felt defeated. How could I argue with that? She was right about the regulations. I had violated them. Every single one. Captain Peters stood to present my defense. He was nervous. I could see it in the way he fumbled with his notes. The defense acknowledges that Lieutenant Angelina acted outside normal channels, he began. However, the circumstances were extraordinary. She faced an impossible choice. Follow procedure and allow 23 people to die, or act decisively to save lives. She chose the latter. That's not insubordination. That's heroism. It felt weak. We both knew it. He called character witnesses. My drill sergeant from basic training, Sergeant Hayes, testified about my dedication and judgment. A few members of my intelligence team spoke about my competence. But it wasn't enough. The tribunal's expressions remained neutral, unconvinced. Then something unexpected happened. Major Scott Henderson, the convoy leader, stood up from the gallery. Permission to testify? The senior tribunal officer looked surprised. Major, you're not on the witness list. Sir, I request permission to testify. This involves my convoy and my judgment that day. Permission was granted. Major Henderson took the stand. I was wrong, he said simply. Lieutenant Angelina tried to warn me. She told me about the ambush. I demanded proper authorization. I insisted on following procedure. If I'd listened to her, we would have avoided the ambush entirely. Instead, I argued with her while the enemy got into position. She saved my life because I was too stubborn to trust her judgment. The room was silent. Lieutenant Angelina didn't just save 23 lives. She saved them after I'd already failed them. She made the hard call that I should have made. If anyone should be on trial, it's me for not listening. One by one, others stood up, requesting to testify. The aid workers from the convoy, Emma, who flew in on her own dime, members of my intelligence team, even Sergeant Miller, who'd followed me into that firefight. They told stories I'd never heard, about times I'd made the right call under pressure, about my judgment, my character, my leadership, about the months of excellent work that led to that one critical moment. Then Catherine Walsh took the stand, the journalist who'd been in the convoy, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and 20 years of war reporting experience. "I've covered conflicts on 4 continents," she said. "I know the difference between recklessness and courage. What Lieutenant Angelina did wasn't reckless. It was the hardest kind of courage there is." She pulled out a laptop and displayed photographs on the screen. The aftermath of the attack, the damage to the vehicles, the blast crater from the suicide bomber. "This is where my vehicle would have been if the route hadn't been changed," she said, pointing to the crater. "I'd be dead. My photographer would be dead. 4 local aid workers would be dead. 16 children would be dead." She showed video footage from the attack, audio recordings from the hostile forces' communications, proving the intelligence had been accurate, interviews with military experts who analyzed the tactical situation. I spoke with 5 different generals, off the record. Every single one said they would have made the same call Lieutenant Angelina made, because sometimes leadership means doing what's right, even when it's not authorized. She turned to face me directly. Lieutenant Angelina risked everything. Her career, her freedom, her life. She did it to save strangers. That's not insubordination. That's the highest form of service. The tribunal called a recess. I waited in a small conference room with Emma. "That went better than expected," she said. "Or it's just making my court-martial more dramatic." 2 hours passed. The longest 2 hours of my life. Finally, we were called back. General Robert Crawford, the senior officer on the tribunal, stood. The room fell silent. "Lieutenant Angelina, this tribunal has carefully considered all evidence and testimony presented." I held my breath. "The charges against you are dismissed." I heard the words but couldn't process them. "Dismissed?" General Crawford continued. "Moreover, this tribunal recommends you for commendation. Your actions demonstrated exceptional leadership, sound tactical judgment, and uncommon courage under fire." Captain Peters looked as shocked as I felt. "Lieutenant, you made a decision that no officer should have to make. You chose between regulations and lives. You chose lives. Under the circumstances, with the intelligence available to you, and with the time constraints you faced, this tribunal finds that you made the correct decision." He paused, looking directly at me. "You're exactly the kind of officer this military needs. Someone who can think critically, act decisively, and put mission and people above personal safety." I couldn't speak. I just nodded. "However," General Crawford said, and my heart dropped again, "this case has attracted significant attention. At the highest levels of the Department of Defense." A side door opened. A woman in an expensive suit entered, carrying a briefcase. "Lieutenant Angelina," she said. "I'm Rebecca Sloan from the Secretary of Defense's office." I started to salute, but she waved me off. "The Secretary has reviewed your case personally. Your actions, your intelligence work over the past 18 months, and your tactical decision-making have been analyzed extensively." She opened her briefcase and pulled out an official-looking document. "Lieutenant, the Secretary of Defense has recommended you for the Defense Distinguished Service Medal, one of the highest military honors this nation can bestow. The award will be presented at a ceremony at the White House in 3 months." The room spun slightly. I gripped the edge of the table. "The President of the United States will personally present the medal." The President, the White House, a presidential citation. 3 years ago, my parents had told me I was playing soldier. They'd said I was embarrassing the family. They'd publicly criticized me in the media. And now, the President of the United States was going to give me a medal. "We'll be in contact with details," Rebecca Sloan said. "Congratulations, Lieutenant. Your country is proud of your service." After she left, after the tribunal was dismissed, after everyone filed out, I sat alone in that courtroom. Emma found me there 20 minutes later. "You okay?" "I don't know what I am," I said honestly. You're a hero, Angelina. Maybe now you can believe it. I thought about my parents, about their mockery, their dismissal, their embarrassment, about seeing them at the back of my basic training graduation, watching them walk away. And now this. I pulled out my phone and typed a simple message. Not to my parents, to myself, a reminder. You don't need their approval. You never did. But even as I typed it, I knew a small part of me still wanted them to see this, to understand, to finally recognize that I'd been right all along. 3 months later, I stood in front of my closet at Fort Bragg, staring at my dress uniform. The White House ceremony was in 2 weeks. The invitation had arrived 6 days ago. Formal, embossed, beautiful. Lieutenant Angelina is invited to a ceremony honoring military service at the White House. The President of the United States will be in attendance. I could bring guests. The invitation said I could bring up to 5 people. I'd already sent invitations to Emma, Sergeant Hayes, Catherine Walsh, the journalist, Major Henderson, and Colonel Morrison, who'd become an unexpected mentor after the hearing. These were the people who'd stood by me, who'd seen my worth when I couldn't see it myself. But there was one thing I needed to do first. I sat down and wrote a letter. To my parents. The first direct communication in over a year. I kept it factual. I explained what had happened. The deployment, the ambush, the hearing, the dismissal of charges, the recommendation for the medal, the upcoming ceremony. I didn't apologize. I didn't ask them to come. I simply informed them. I wanted you to hear this from me before you see it on the news. I signed it, sealed it, and mailed it before I could change my mind. 3 days later, my phone rang. An unknown number, Connecticut area code. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Angelina. It's your mother. Her voice sounded different, uncertain, almost nervous. Mom. Long silence. We received your letter. I waited. That's quite an honor. The White House. The President. More silence. I wasn't going to make this easy for her. Your father and I have been discussing things. We think we may have been too harsh. Too harsh. After 3 years of rejection, after public humiliation, after abandoning me when I needed them most. Too harsh? I repeated, my voice flat. We were worried about you, Angelina. The military is dangerous. We didn't want you to get hurt. I gripped the phone tighter. I did get hurt, Mom. I was in a hospital in Germany with shrapnel wounds and broken ribs. You knew about it. The journalist contacted you, and you told the media I was glory-seeking and reckless. That was taken out of context. We were upset. We didn't mean it the way it sounded. For 3 years you've been upset. Through basic training, where I graduated with honors. Through officer school, where I was top of my class. Through my deployment, where I served with distinction. Through my investigation, where I faced court-martial. You've been consistently upset, Mom. We'd like to come to the ceremony. There it was. Now that there was a presidential medal, now that there was prestige and recognition, now they wanted to be involved. Why? I asked. Because you're our daughter. I laughed. It came out bitter. I was your daughter when I graduated from basic training and you walked away before I could reach you. I was your daughter when I deployed to a combat zone, and you never responded to my letters. I was your daughter when I was lying in a hospital bed, and you told reporters I was reckless. Angelina, please, where were you, Mom? When I needed you? When I was scared before deployment? When I was recovering from injuries? When I faced losing everything I'd worked for? My mother tried to interrupt, but I kept going. The words had been building for 3 years. You called me soldier playing dress-up. You said I was embarrassing the family. You gave me a handbag and a job application and told me you'd already planned my whole life. You never once asked me what I wanted, what I dreamed about, who I wanted to be. We're trying to make amends now, my mother said, her voice rising defensively. No. You're trying to be associated with something successful. There's a difference. My father's voice came on the line. They must have been on speaker. Angelina, that's enough. We're your parents. You owe us respect. I laughed again, this time with genuine disbelief. I owe you respect? For what? Exactly. For planning my life without asking me? For mocking my choices? For abandoning me when I chose a different path? For publicly humiliating me in national media? We gave you everything. We paid $80,000 for your education, and I'm grateful for that. Truly. But you don't get to control my life because you paid for college. You don't get to demand respect you haven't earned. Respect goes both ways, Dad. Fine. His voice was hard now, angry. We're coming to the ceremony anyway. You can't stop us. It's a public event. You're absolutely right. I can't stop you. But if you come, you'll sit in the public section with strangers. You won't be my guests. You won't be acknowledged as my family, because you're not. Not in any way that matters. My mother's voice cracked. How can you say that? We're your parents. Biologically, yes. But family is more than biology, Mom. Family shows up. Family supports you even when they don't understand. Family doesn't abandon you because you made different choices. You stopped being my family 3 years ago. I'm just finally accepting it. Angelina, please. Don't do this. I'm not doing anything. I'm just finally stopping the pattern of hoping you'll change. Hoping you'll see me. Hoping you'll be proud. I'm done hoping. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but I felt strangely calm. I'd finally said everything I'd needed to say for 3 years. The next week passed in a blur of preparation. Uniform fittings. Rehearsals. Briefings about protocol. I threw myself into the details to avoid thinking about the phone call. 2 days before the ceremony, a package arrived. Brown paper, careful wrapping, Connecticut postmark. Inside were my old combat boots from basic training. The ones I'd left at home when my parents had mocked them. The ones they'd called toys. They'd been polished to a perfect mirror shine. Every scuff buffed out. The leather supple and cared for. A note, in handwriting I didn't recognize at first. Then realized was my grandmother Eleanor's. I've kept these safe for you. Your parents didn't know I took them from the trash. Wear them with pride, my dear girl. I always knew you would do something extraordinary. I'm sorry I won't be there to see it. With all my love, Grandma. The note was dated 4 months ago. I called my mother. When did Grandma die? Silence. Then, quietly. 3 months ago. 3 months. And you never told me. You'd made it clear you didn't want to be part of the family. She was my grandmother. I loved her. I would have come home for the funeral. We didn't think you'd care. I looked at the boots, at my grandmother's note. She believed in me, I said quietly. She was the only one who did. That's not fair, isn't it? Goodbye, Mom. I hung up and sat holding those boots. The one person in my family who'd seen my worth, who'd believed I could be extraordinary. And I'd missed the chance to share this moment with her. But I had her boots, and her words, and her belief. That would have to be enough. The night before the ceremony, Emma arrived at my quarters. We'd both traveled to Washington, D.C. early. You ready? She asked. I don't know. Am I supposed to feel triumphant? Because I just feel tired. You don't have to feel anything. Just show up and accept what you've earned. My parents will be there. In the back. Watching. Let them watch. Let them see what they missed out on. I looked at my grandmother's boots, polished and ready. I'm wearing these tomorrow. Emma smiled. Perfect. I stood in the East Room of the White House, dressed in my formal military uniform, with my grandmother's boots gleaming beneath the hem of my trousers. The room was magnificent. Chandeliers sparkled overhead. American flags flanked a small stage. Rows of chairs held military brass, government officials, and members of the press. In the front row sat my chosen family. Emma in her dress uniform, medals on her chest. Sergeant Hayes, retired now but wearing her uniform one more time for this. Catherine Walsh with her camera. Major Henderson. Colonel Morrison, who'd become more than an investigator, who'd become a mentor. These were the people who'd believed in me. I scanned the back of the room. There, standing against the wall with other members of the public, I saw them. My father in his business suit, my mother in an expensive dress, Thomas checking his phone, Grace looking nervous and uncomfortable. They'd come anyway. I felt nothing when I saw them. No anger, no hurt, just a distant acknowledgement of their presence. The ceremony began. Military protocol, precise and formal. The citation was read aloud, describing my actions in detail. The intelligence gathering, the decision to act without authorization, the lives saved. Every word felt surreal. Then the president entered. Everyone stood. He was shorter in person than he appeared on television, but the presence was unmistakable. Authority and warmth in equal measure. He walked directly to me, hand extended. "Lieutenant Angelina," he said, his voice carrying across the room. "Your actions represent the very best of American military service. You made an impossible decision. Under extraordinary circumstances, you chose courage over caution, lives over regulations, service over self-interest." He pinned the Defense Distinguished Service Medal to my uniform. The weight of it was surprising, heavy, real. The room erupted in applause, but the president didn't step back. He turned to the audience. "I'd like to share something not in the official program," he said. The room quieted immediately. Lieutenant Angelina's story came to my attention not just because of her heroism in combat, but because of what happened afterward. This woman risked her career and her freedom to save 23 lives. Then she faced down a military tribunal with the same courage she'd shown in combat. He described the hearing, the charges, the testimonies. "You remind us what true leadership looks like," he said, turning back to me. "Making the hard call when no one else will. Standing alone if necessary. Doing what's right even when it costs you everything." He gestured to my front row. "But you're not alone anymore, are you, Lieutenant?" I shook my head, tears building in my eyes despite my best efforts. "These people," he continued, "are here because you earned their respect and loyalty through your actions, your character, your courage. That's the real honor. Not this medal, as prestigious as it is, but the loyalty of people who've seen you at your best and your worst, and choose to stand with you anyway." The ceremony concluded. I stepped down from the platform, immediately surrounded by Emma and my team. They hugged me, congratulated me, celebrated with genuine joy. Through the crowd, I saw my parents approaching. My father's hand was extended. My mother was smiling. Thomas had finally put away his phone. Grace was crying. "Angelina," my father said. "That was quite something." My mother reached for my hand. "We're so proud of you." Thomas actually looked impressed. "Hey, that was actually pretty cool. The president knows your name." Grace hugged me awkwardly. "Can we take a picture together? For social media?" They were smiling, acting as if the past 3 years hadn't happened. As if they'd always supported me, ready to bask in reflected glory. I looked at each of them. Really looked. "Thank you for coming," I said quietly. My father brightened. "Of course we came. You're our daughter. I appreciate that you witnessed this. But my family is behind me." I gestured to Emma, to Sergeant Hayes, to the people who'd actually shown up when it mattered. These are the people who believed in me when it was hard, who stood by me when I had nothing to offer but hope and determination, who saw my worth when I couldn't see it myself. My mother's face started to crumple. "Angelina, please, we're trying. I know, and I appreciate that. But you need to understand something. I forgive you. I really do. But forgiveness doesn't mean pretending the past didn't happen. It doesn't mean erasing 3 years of hurt." My father, for the first time I could remember, looked truly uncertain. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that if you want to be part of my life, it starts with honesty. No more dismissing my choices. No more embarrassment. No more conditional love, based on whether my career fits your expectations." For a long moment, My father said nothing. Then his voice cracked. We were wrong. We were so wrong about everything. My mother nodded, tears streaming down her face. We were scared. We didn't understand the military. We didn't understand you. But that's not an excuse for how we treated you. Thomas stepped forward, his usual cockiness gone. I was a jerk, Angie. A complete jerk. I'm sorry. Grace was openly crying now. I missed you. I should have called. I should have written. I should have stood up for you. I was a coward. They weren't making excuses anymore. They were taking responsibility. I saw real remorse in their faces, real understanding of what they'd done. I know, I said softly. And maybe, someday, we can rebuild something. But it has to be different. It has to be real. No more pretending. No more planning my life without asking me. No more treating my choices as embarrassments. My father nodded slowly. Whatever you need, however long it takes, we'll earn it back. We'll earn you back. Then start by meeting the people who matter to me. I introduced them to Emma, who shook their hands politely, but with clear wariness. To Sergeant Hayes, who eyed them with the assessment of someone who'd seen too many people disappoint her soldiers. To Catherine Walsh, who studied them with a journalist's eye. To Major Henderson and Colonel Morrison. My parents were uncomfortable, humbled. They listened as Emma told stories about my courage under fire. As Sergeant Hayes described my dedication and growth. As Catherine recounted the attack and its aftermath. They were learning about their daughter through the eyes of people who truly knew her. It was awkward. It was painful. But it was real. Later, I stood alone for a moment, near one of the tall windows. The metal was heavy on my chest. My grandmother's boots felt solid beneath me. I thought about the journey from that dining room table in Connecticut to this moment. The rejection, the pain, the growth, the triumph. I'd learned that validation from the right people mattered infinitely more than approval from everyone. That family wasn't just blood, but the people who showed up when it counted. That standing alone with integrity was better than standing with a crowd that didn't believe in you. I'd learned that respect must be earned, not demanded. That the hardest battles aren't always fought with weapons. Sometimes they're fought with the simple courage to be yourself, even when the people you love can't see your worth. The president walked past, heading toward the exit. He saw me standing there, surrounded by my chosen family, with my biological family awkwardly trying to connect nearby. He paused, then called for attention one final time. Before I leave, he said, his voice carrying across the room, I want to say something. When Lieutenant Angelina entered this room today, I stood up. Every person here stood up, not because of protocol, not because of tradition, but because this woman earned it. He looked around the room, his gaze settling briefly on my parents. Through sacrifice, through courage, through unwavering commitment to doing what's right, even when it costs her everything. That kind of person deserves to be recognized by their country and by their family. The message was clear, pointed, unmistakable. My parents heard it. Everyone heard it. The president left. The room erupted in one final standing ovation. This time, my father stood first. His hands shook as he clapped. My mother's face was wet with tears. Thomas stood straight, clapping hard. Grace was smiling through her tears. They finally saw what everyone else had seen all along. Their daughter was extraordinary, and they'd almost lost the chance to know her. That Emma appeared at my side. You did it. We did it, I corrected. I couldn't have done any of this alone. That's what family does, the real kind. I looked at the medal on my chest, at my grandmother's boots on my feet, at the people surrounding me with genuine love and pride, at my parents, standing in the back, finally beginning to understand. I'd made it, not just to this ceremony, but through the journey, through the rejection, and the pain and the doubt. I'd become the person I always knew I could be, with or without their approval. But now, maybe, with their respect. And that made all the difference. I smiled. Really smiled. For the first time in years, I felt complete. Not because I'd won their approval, but because I'd found my own worth. Because I'd built a family of choice. Because I'd served with honor and courage. Because I'd stayed true to myself, even when it cost me everything. The medal was just metal and ribbon. The real award was standing around me. People who believed in me. People I'd die for. And who'd die for me. People who saw the best in me and demanded I live up to it. That was worth more than any medal, more than any presidential citation, more than any parent's approval. I'd found my place, my purpose, my people, and I'd done it my way, in my grandmother's boots. With courage she'd always known I possessed. That was enough. That was everything. So let me ask you something. Have you ever had to choose between doing what's right and doing what's expected? Have you ever stood alone for something you believed in, even when the people you loved couldn't understand? I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. And if this story touched you, if it made you feel something, please hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories about courage, resilience, and finding your own path. Share this with someone who needs to hear that their worth isn't determined by who believes in them, but by who they choose to become. Thank you for listening to my story. May you always have the courage to be true to yourself. And may you find your own family in the people who see your light, even in your darkest moments. Until next time, stay strong, stay brave, and remember that you are worthy exactly as you are.